So we just got an extended cut of Spider-Man No Way Home, aptly named the More Fun Stuff version, that added in a ton of additional content. Most were little scenes, nothing overly major. However, we also got another end credit scene, in place of the Multiverse of Madness trailer that the film originally had attached to it. And this end scene, while mostly played for humor, actually potentially answers a few questions about how the spell that Strange cast at the end of the movie works. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So, okay, let's start this off by going over what was in that end credit scene before going over what it might mean. Now, as I said in that introduction, this end credit scene actually takes the place of the Multiverse of Madness trailer that was there on the original release. Which makes sense, why would you include a trailer for a movie that's already out? So that means that whole Venom in a bar sequence is still there and just as confusing as to why it was included at all. But that's really neither here nor there. This new scene shows a segment of the high school news broadcast, giving us more Betty Brant, which is a welcome addition given just how devoid of the character the original release was. As she is speaking about the end of the school year and how herself and many of her classmates were graduating and moving on to other things, we saw a montage showing us moments from throughout some of the characters' high school careers. And we saw stuff such as the math team preparing to leave to go to DC that we saw in Homecoming, people mulling about in the hallways like teens are wont to do, and of course plenty of shots of the big Europe trip from Far From Home. But do you know who was nearly completely absent from all of these images? Peter Parker. And yes, I did say nearly all of them, but we'll circle back to that here shortly. Looking at these images, many of them look like ones that Peter should have been in. I mean, we know that he went on the trips to both DC and Europe, so naturally we could assume he'd appear in some of those pictures. And we also see, MJ and Ned hanging out in the hallway, which logically it would make sense for Peter to be there as well. And yet, there's nothing. He's not in those shots. So this has got some people thinking. Does this mean that the spell Strange cast, in order to make the entire universe forget Peter Parker ever existed, wiped him out of pictures and such completely as well? It is certainly possible. And honestly, it would help us as audience members get a closer look at the actual rules of the spell, which would be just a little bit helpful. But here's the thing. There is still at least one picture in that montage where you can see Peter. At one point, we see a group shot from Venice, with the whole tour group posing in that big square. The one where we saw MJ playing with some pigeons. Peter is there, smack dab in the middle of the group, but his face is obscured by a pigeon. Now, this was probably played for a joke, but what if it means that what we were thinking because of those other images isn't actually the case? It wouldn't be the first time that the MCU has obscured some foreshadowing with a joke. You see, it's wholly possible that more pictures of Peter exist. We just didn't see them, which actually makes a little bit of sense when you think about it. If I was some kid in high school editing an end of the year montage like that, I'd try hard to not include pictures of just some rando that no one seems to know, which is what they would think of Peter. So while it would make sense for him to be in those other pics, because he was present during those moments, maybe we're just seeing cherry-picked images that cut around Peter's presence. Now, this idea has given me a rather interesting thought. If we take the possibility of there being other pictures out there with Peter in them, presumably ones where he's hanging out with other named characters, and we take that and we combine it with something that MJ said at the end of the movie, we might just have a possible way for her to work her way back into Peter Parker's life. You see, MJ is very astute, and honestly a little paranoid. So let's just say that one day, she's looking back at some old photos from her time in high school, and she sees this guy that she can't remember, except for that one time. That one time that this weirdo showed up to her work and acted a little strange before leaving. What if that is the catalyst to her putting two and two together and figuring out that he is Spider-Man? And that the two have some sort of shared history. Now, based on the fact that Multiverse of Madness showed us that Doctor Strange remembers that he did stuff with Spider-Man on Liberty Island, he just can't remember what the guy looks like, then it could be safe to assume that MJ remembers those events as well, meaning that she knows she has some sort of connection to the webhead. Being a smart person, she might start putting these things together and figure it out. And it is certainly possible that her figuring it out at all would allow her to sort of get past the spell, regaining her memories. She did tell him that she was gonna figure it out if he didn't come and find her, so you know, that's some possible foreshadowing. Or maybe Ned will be the one who puts the pieces together. Then perhaps he'll get angry at the best friend who seemingly abandoned him despite promising to come back, which will then lead down the road towards us getting Ned Leeds as the Hobgoblin in a future Spider-Man movie. Maybe. I'm kinda just spitballing here. Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video and I want to know what you think. Do you think that there might be other pictures of Peter Parker out there somewhere, and that might be the key to getting his friends back? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to ScreenRant for even more great videos just like this in the future.